There we go. That's better. That's more of what I was looking for. Welcome, everybody, to the first live stream. It's just me, just G, as the title implies. And we're going to kind of hold off a little bit. Welcome to the first person to the stream. We're just going to probably hold off just a little bit to get started with the content I have set up for you guys today. We're going to start off a little mini series that I have kind of planned out where I know it's early in the NFL offseason, but with this whole kind of coronavirus thing going around, there really isn't much in sports going on except for NFL free agency and the NFL draft prep that's going to be coming up hopefully soon. They're talking about rescheduling the NFL draft, but hopefully, they're not going to have to do too much to that date and too much to that process. So we're just going to hold off a little bit. I don't know who all's in or watching the stream right now. Thank you for tuning in. I hope everybody's doing well, staying home, staying safe, practicing some social distancing while this whole coronavirus issue is going on. And it really is a shame that it's taken such a toll on everybody's lives and done so much to sports and everything going on. This is my first live stream, so hopefully everything goes well. Praying. I shouldn't say first. I used to stream some it was like NHL 17 or something like that. I used to play pretty often. What is that? I don't need all that. It's just me for right now. That's fine. I need that. So, yeah, we're just going to be patient a little bit and see if anybody else tunes in. Maybe wait another 30 to 45 seconds till hopefully some other people enter, tune in, and then I'll get started with some of the content. So if you're in the chat right now, please just hold on for me. Be patient. Hopefully the sound's good. I don't really think my headset will tell me, but we'll find out. Yeah, as expected, this doesn't actually have any feedback, so don't really need that. I'm perfectly fine listening to nothing or just listening to myself as I talk. That sounds really bad. You know what? It is already 5 after 5. I said I was going to get the stream going at 5 o'clock, and was a little bit late on my own part. That's my fault. Very new to this. Still trying to get the whole YouTube live thing set up, ready to go. So we're just going to jump right into it. So what we're talking about today is the free agency. NFL free agency has just started. Started, I think, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, if that. And the first division that I wanted to start out talking about is the AFC East. Now, I chose this one specifically because, one, if you don't know, I'm a big Jets fan. Love the Jets. My mom is a huge Jets fan, so I kind of took after her. But it's not just that. It's not just that I'm a Jets fan and my co-host on the normal show that I do, which was the G and Finn show on Rebel Radio, he's also a huge Jets fan. And I wasn't only doing it because of that, but there's just a lot of turnover in this division. And this could be one of the divisions that gets shaken up the most next season, mainly from the standpoint of one or two teams that used to be at the top and very well could drop even, 2 places in the division. So, we're going to start with the record of this division last season. So top of the division, as has been for the last 20 years, was the New England Patriots. They ended last season with a 12-4 record. They were followed up by the upstart Buffalo Bills, came out with a 10-6 record, which for the Bills, that's very impressive. That's a very good record. They're on their way up. And I think as we go through this and talk about the pickups that they've made, and even some of their losses just haven't been that major, they very well could be the new leaders of this division. Third in the division was my New York Jets, 7-9. They had a really tough year last year, really hampered by injuries, which is just a big shame because 7-9, they went on a really good streak of play towards the end of the season when they actually had starting quarterback Sam Darnold back to play after he missed a chunk of the year with mononucleosis, which, I mean, come on, guys. Really? I get it. That's one of those things where you're going to make fun of Sam Darnold for that, but it happens. Stuff happens. I'm nothing really else you can say about it at this point. And last but not least in the division is the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins last year, 5-11. Again, just another not very good year. They were expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. They go out and they kind of stick to that. They don't play very well. Somehow they had a strong offense behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. They pick up Josh Rosen from the Cardinals, who had just drafted Kyler Murray. Rosen doesn't really get much game time, which I think is a shame for him and just not a great start to his career. Is this all right? Yeah, this says that it's on, so hopefully I'm not being too loud, too quiet. If you are tuning in right now, please let me know how the volume is. I can't tell. There's no feedback for me to be able to tell. So we're going to move quickly on, and we're going to take these offseason moves so far, these free agent moves. We're going to start those with the teams that were at the top of the division last season, and we're going to go to the bottom. And then kind of at the end of this, I want to take another look at those standings and kind of decide, where teams might fall, where teams might maybe even get better. Some of these teams really do look like they're on the up and up. So we're going to get into that in just a couple minutes, see if anybody else will come and join the stream. I'm going to tweet it out, send it out on some social media. Hopefully we can get some other people here to watch the stream. Thank you for tuning in right on time. I really do appreciate that. I'm sorry for the delay in a lot of this content, but I really would like there to be a strong audience. I do have the chat pulled up. I would love for there to be some, back and forth with myself and whoever else is in the chat. But again, please, thank you for tuning in. Please stick with me. Again, I do apologize for the dead air to my one current viewer. I do apologize for the dead air. I am trying to really send this out, really spread the word. Right after I'm done with this, we'll start getting into the content just a little bit more. All right, sorry about that. Sorry to keep you waiting. We'll just hope people start to trickle in, but we're going to get going. So we're going to start with the New England Patriots, and I'm going to start each team with their additions and follow that up with their team losses. I know everybody knows the big loss for this team, but like I said, we're just going to start with the people that they're bringing in. So, and I'm going to also preface everything by saying, excuse me, this is not a very comprehensive list. This isn't every single player that they've signed this offseason. I'm using NFL Network. I'm using their list of notable additions and notable subtractions. So for the Patriots, they brought in Bo Allen, a defensive lineman. He signed a 2-year deal. Demare Bird, just a 1-year deal. That's just some more wide receiver depth for this team. Brian Hoyer, the quarterback that they've brought in. So far, this is just the first quarterback they're bringing in. For Patriots fans, they have to hope that there's another move coming, because as of right now, that leaves this 3 quarterback rotation for the Patriots being Brian Hoyer, Jarrett Stidham, and Cody Kessler. That really doesn't inspire confidence. So that does kind of give away a little bit of one of the big losses coming up for this team. But they're also bringing in safety Devin McCourty, Adrian Phillips, another veteran safety, agreeing to a contract with the Patriots. We've got a couple offensive linemen staying with the team. You've got, excuse me. Sorry about that. Got a pretty important email, it looked like, but turns out it wasn't anything too crazy. So Matthew Slater, a special teams player, re-signed with the Patriots, as well as Joe Thuney, who was possibly going to be the biggest guard name on the market this offseason, but the Patriots placed their franchise tag on him. He is staying in New England, and a fullback, Danny Vitale, is going to the Patriots. It'll be interesting to see what Bill Belichick decides to do with Vitale. That isn't a position that's really needed or utilized much in today's NFL as much as it used to be. It will be interesting to see how his usage changes or how he is utilized in a Bill Belichick offense. Now come the losses. The losses for this team, for the Patriots, the list is extensive. The list it's long. And a lot of these players were very, very important to a Bill Belichick team. So we've got to get it out of the way. Tom Brady, the quarterback of the New England Patriots for the last 20 years, 6-time Super Bowl champion, is no longer in New England. He has traded the cold, harsh winters of the Northeast for the sunny beaches of Tampa Bay. He is going to play with Bruce Arians and the Bucs next season. A lot of these other changes are a little bit less interesting necessarily when you consider the impact that Tom Brady has had on the franchise for the last 2 decades. But Philip Dorsett, the wide receiver, has made his way to Seattle. Ben Watson retired again. Offensive lineman Ted Karras went down to Miami, as did Elandon Roberts and Kyle Van Noy. That said, a couple of the Patriots went out to Detroit, interestingly enough, to play for former defensive coordinator Matt Patricia. So that's defensive lineman Danny Shelton and defensive lineman Danny Shelton, linebacker Jamie Collins, and safety Duran Harmon. And the one player on this team that will not be returning or has not signed a contract yet, and we're not 100% sure where this player is going just yet, is their kicker Steven Gostkowski. If I'm not mistaken, he missed a good chunk of last season with injury, which for a kicker is rare for them to really pick up a large knock like that where they miss game time. So what is going to be the biggest impact on this Patriots team next season? Look, it's got to be the lack of Tom Brady. Now, I'm not putting the nail in the coffin of the Patriots just yet. Do I think they'll be number one in the division next season? No. I think that they, with all these losses and with a lot of these players staying in the division, I do think there will be a new champion of the AFC East. We'll get to them in just a little bit. But for right now, the biggest question mark for this Patriots team has to be two things. It's going to be twofold. What does Belichick do without Brady? Now, he's done it before. Belichick has been without Brady before. And thing is, the last couple times that it's been Belichick without Brady, it's gone spectacularly well for Belichick and the Patriots. Last time, it was a 4-game suspension of Tom Brady for the whole deflate gate thing, taking air out of the footballs. And that went very well for the Patriots. The Patriots ended up going 3-1, getting wins out of Jimmy Garoppolo and putting Jacoby Brissett on the map, realistically, getting himself a payday. Brissett now playing with Indianapolis. And then before that, winning 11 games with another backup quarterback. So I think it will come down to how well Belichick schemes with these new quarterbacks, or if the Patriots and Bill Belichick decide to go get a new quarterback. Now, there are a couple quarterbacks on the market. Cam Newton just recently entered free agency. There's no saying or telling where he'll end up or at what price for that matter. Patriots also have the draft. There are a couple quarterbacks that could go in later rounds, be that, Jordan Love or Jacob Eason. Both those guys have a lot of the physical attributes that quarterback coaches are looking for and offensive coordinators are looking for. Now, whether they fit the Patriot way and New England, that's to be seen. So I think this defense will continue to hold up. They still have a lot of their secondary, and they even picked up a little bit of help in McCourty and Phillips for that secondary. I think they've lost a little bit in the middle of their defense, losing out, Collins, Van Noy, even Shelton and Roberts. All these guys really held down the middle area of that defensive scheme that Bill Belichick really utilizes. Now, I don't think that'll affect too much because, as you've seen with Patriots teams for the last 2 decades with Belichick at the helm, they've been extremely good at just taking players, plugging them in, maintaining a set scheme, and succeeding. We'll see if the Patriots are able to do that with a different player at quarterback and one that may not be as talented as players that they've had in the past, be that Hoyer or even Stidham, or, as much as I hate to say it, Cody Kessler, who at first, when Kessler first got into the league, I was pretty high on Kessler. I thought he looked very good in Cleveland for the little bit of time that he actually got playing time, but obviously through injury, that really hasn't been sustainable for him. Now, the Patriots do have a little bit of option with the trade market as well. I've seen them linked to maybe getting Andy Dalton out of Cincinnati if the Bengals decide to go out and draft Joe Burrow with the number 1 pick, which I would expect them to do. I feel like it would be silly for them to not do that. It really wouldn't make a lot of sense for Cincinnati to go elsewhere other than the quarterback. So that's what I've got so far. We're going to get to actual predictions and re-ranking the AFC East once we go through the moves made by each of these teams. So we're going to move on from the former number 1 Patriots and down to, or I should say, just over a state and go to Buffalo, out to Orchard Park, where the Bills have had themselves a very, very busy offseason so far. Welcome to another viewer. Thank you for tuning in. We are moving quickly along to the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills have been busy. The Bills have made themselves some moves, and I think the Bills are better for it. Now, they do have some notable losses, but just the people that they've brought in should really change the atmosphere of this team. So one of the first, signings they made was bringing in Mario Addison. He's going to be very good for that defense, which was already pretty spectacular last season, especially at getting to the quarterback. So we'll see if this defense really does make a lot of changes, especially with some of the other people coming in. So Vernon Butler also coming in, Quentin Jefferson on that defense, Josh Norman also coming in to kind of shore up that secondary. And the big changes, so One of the big blockbuster trades of the offseason so far has been between Buffalo and Minnesota. So Stephon Diggs going to Buffalo, really becoming their number one target. Excuse me. New number one target in Buffalo will be Stephon Diggs. There's no doubt about that. The Bills last season never really had a deep threat. You could say John Brown, but he really kind of came into his own late in the season. So now with a wide receiving group of Stephon Diggs, John Brown, you even got what's his name? I can't remember his name. They do have a good slot receiver there. They have Dawson Knox at tight end. That offense really should be great. That offense really should perform to a higher level than they did last season, especially if Josh Allen takes another step forward. Now, to help out with that offense as well, they brought in Quentin Spain, an offensive guard. But other than that, they really haven't made many moves this offseason. I haven't seen anything else notable. Their notable losses, though, they have had some big losses, namely Shaq Lawson, another one of their edge rushers who had a great year last year, is going down to Miami. And yes, if you can tell, there's a trend here of players going down to Miami for a lot more money than they might be worth necessarily. But we'll see how that turns out for them. I'll get to them later on. I don't necessarily have a good feeling about that. These moves that Miami is making. So other losses right now for Buffalo, either players that have not been signed by other teams or players that have been signed. So running back Frank Gore, who, I mean, he's just kind of a legend of the game. He's been doing it for years now. I don't think he's hanging it up just yet. I haven't heard anything about him choosing retirement over playing for another team next season. So another defensive tackle, Corey Luget, I want to say. Luget? I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his name. Jordan Phillips, another defensive tackle, went to Arizona to play for the Cardinals. As I already said, edge rusher Shaq Lawson moving down to Miami. Lorenzo Alexander, which that one could be one of the bigger losses for this Buffalo team. We don't know where he's going yet. I don't believe he's signed anywhere just yet. Corner Kevin Johnson went to Cleveland, and safety Kurt Coleman, again, is so far undecided on where he's going to go. I strongly believe, just based on the way that this Buffalo team played last year and the additions that they've made, that I think this is going to be the team in the AFC East, I should say, excuse me. This team, they play strong defense, they're well coached, and their offense looked to be explosive last year. Josh Allen really looks like he took a step forward. He's fantastic on the ground. He's got a cannon of an arm, and now that he actively has a deep threat in Stephon Diggs, I mean, there's so much more that this offense could do that they really couldn't do last year, I think. So, again, I'm not going to put a record on it just yet. I feel like teams have to go through the draft and the draft process before we can really make a lot of, decisions or predictions on these teams. But if there's anything that this Bills team could need, any team needs help and depth at the offensive line position. That's arguably some of the most important parts or most important pieces on the football field. They've got a quarterback in place. They have a number one receiver. They could use some help at running back. Singletary did look very good last season. And I think they're going to stick with Singletary in the backfield as their new number one guy. At defense, again, their defense was very strong last year, as is per the usual. And they've picked up some help with that, even with Addison and Jefferson, and even Norman helping out in the secondary. Again, I do think this Bills team is going to be the team to beat in the AFC East, as much as it pains me to say that. I can just say that I'm glad it isn't the Patriots anymore. So we're going to move on to the Jets. On to the Jets. Now, as much as I love this team, as much as big of a Jets fan as I am, They've been quiet so far, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. They weren't able to go out and spend all the money like they did last year or and the year before that. They didn't get the number one defensive player. They didn't get the number one offensive lineman. They didn't go out and get, even spending arguably too much on the number one linebacker. I mean, last season they did that with CJ Mosley. He was fantastic for the first couple games that he got to play. But thing is, he didn't actually get to play that much. He was hurt most of the season. The Jets this offseason, cut Tremaine Johnson, who he looked lost a lot of the time. And I wish I could say that he played better than he did for this team. So we're just going to go into who the Jets have brought in so far this offseason. The Jets so far have brought in Josh Andrews, an offensive lineman. Pierre Desir, corner, very good depth player that the Jets are going to need, especially in the secondary. George Fant, yeah, he's an offensive tackle. He's coming in from Seattle. They're paying him just over $9 million a year. We'll get into what I think about that. I'm not so sure about that move. They're bringing back Jordan Jenkins, brought in again on a 1-year deal. Alex Lewis agreed to terms on a new deal as well. Connor McGovern signing on another 3-year deal, $27 million over 3 years, includes 18 fully guaranteed. Now, to shore up that center position, I feel like was a very good move by this team. But we'll get into some of the losses in just a second after I finish up the additions. They bring in Brashad Perriman on a 1-year deal. I think Tampa really did want to bring him back to kind of shore up that wide receiver 3 spot that seemed to be missing with Tom Brady. They do have 2 very, very good receivers, but Perriman would have really just added that extra element of depth. But instead, he's coming up to New York on a 1-year, $8 million deal. The Jets also re-signed Brian Poole, one of their corners, with 1 year, $5 million guaranteed. And last but not least, they brought in Greg Van Roten, another offensive lineman, signing a 3-year deal with the Jets. If you couldn't tell, GM Joe Douglas is very, very focused on fixing this offensive line, fixing the part of this team that seemed to really hinder the performance of the running back Le'Veon Bell, who the Jets paid for last offseason, young quarterback, I should say, Sam Darnold. Even though he did play well last season when healthy, that offensive line still let him get hit. And even the backup quarterbacks, Trevor Siemian, who is no longer with the team, I mean, in the one or 2 games that he played, I don't even think he finished out. One of the games had his leg broken. He didn't finish the rest of the year because he broke his leg. And I mean, that in a way that has to fall on the offensive line just because they didn't protect him. He was under duress the entire game until I think it was Myles Garrett actually came in and broke his leg. So before we get into kind of how I think the Jets are going to perform next season, I think we need to get into some of the players that the Jets are losing. Now, Trevor Siemian is not coming back to the team. Robbie Anderson has signed with the Panthers. A lot of Jets fans really wanted Robbie to stay, but it seems as though even though he would have gotten more money to stay with the Jets, it appears Joe Douglas was willing to pay him up to $11 million a year. He only got 10 with Carolina. He really wanted to go back and play under his former head coach, Matt Rule, who is the new head coach in Carolina. Demaryius Thomas is no longer with the Jets as well, or he just has not re-signed. Ryan Khalil, I think he may have gone back into retirement. If I remember correctly, last offseason he retired. The Jets offered him a new contract midway through the season or late in the offseason. He signed with the Jets and became one of their starting offensive linemen. Kelvin Beachum is also not back. Brandon Copeland went up to New England to play for the Patriots. Darryl Roberts, as far as I know, has not signed, and Maurice Canady is now with the Cowboys. One other player that I think should be noted on here is Shell, the former starting offensive tackle for the Jets. He went to Seattle, essentially making it a kind of a 1-for-1 swap between the Jets and the Seahawks of Shell and Fant. Now, Into how I think this team is going to perform. I do think that this team will be better. I think that they'll be better than they were last season, but I'm not sure by how much. I'm still not 100% sold on Adam Gase as the head coach of the New York Jets. I'm still not sold. I I'm still not sold. I don't know if he has what it takes to be the head coach of this team, just based on how his interactions have been with the media, how it appears some of his interactions have been with some of the players. I'm just not sure on that front. And with some of the skill positions on this team, the Jets still need some depth at wide receiver. Yeah, they brought in Perriman, but I don't think he's a number one wide receiver yet. I know Jamison Crowder isn't. I know Quincy Enunwa isn't, and I know that Chris Herndon he's a tight end. As much as I really like him and his skill set, I don't believe that Adam Gase's offense really utilizes him to the best of his ability. The defense, I think the defense will be good. I think they'll be about the same. I think Desir will come in and perform at least better than Tremaine, as much as I wish Tremaine had played well and I wish him well in Atlanta. I think Desir will bring the same, if not even better, production than him. This season, I think, comes down to the draft, and the Jets really have just two options in the draft. They have a high draft pick. They're picking at number 11. They can go out and get an offensive lineman if an offensive lineman is available. There are a couple really, really strong offensive linemen at the top end of this draft. The only thing is will one fall? And if one doesn't, who do the Jets go out and get? Well, a lot of people would like to see them go out and pick a wide receiver because, again, this is a draft that has a lot of wide receiver talent in it. You've got Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy coming out of Alabama, and you also have CeeDee Lamb coming from Oklahoma. Those three on their own could immediately step in and be a number one receiver for this Jets team, especially this Jets team that doesn't have a lot of depth at the position. So that's really all I have for the Jets, because a lot of what the Jets are doing depends on how they do with the draft and what they do with the draft. Now, based on the moves made so far in free agency, I tend to now have a belief in Joe Douglas and his ideas and what he plans to bring to this team. So we are going to move on to the last team in the division, the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins have an interesting situation going on because they have brought in a lot of talent through free agency. They really, and they spend a lot of money as well. Here's the thing. This Dolphins team, to me, is very reminiscent of the Giants just a couple of years ago, when the Giants were the big spenders in the first week or two of free agency. And I can just say that it didn't really work out well for the Giants. The Giants had a year, maybe year and a half of success with their big free agent signings, but after that, it fell off. A lot of those signings aren't on the team anymore. Excuse me. Now, to kind of break down, what the Dolphins have done, they have brought in a lot of help for their defense, I can say. Bring in Adrian Colbert, safety. He re-signed with the team, staying for 1 year, pretty cheap contract. Kamu Grugier-Hill signed with the Dolphins as well. Byron Jones became one of the highest paid corners in the NFL, signing a 5-year, $82 million contract. That includes $54.5 million guaranteed. Now, I'm not sure if he's worth that or not, but the Dolphins will sure see. Shaq Lawson signing a 3-year deal there. Emmanuel Ogba signing a 2-year deal. Landon Roberts coming down from New England. Kyle Van Noy also coming from New England. Van Noy's deal, very big, 4 years, $51 million. They're just spending a ton of money. And then on the offensive side of the ball, bringing in Eric Flowers, 3 years, $30 million deal, almost $20 million guaranteed. Jordan Howard, a 2-year, $10 million contract. Now, for a running back like Jordan Howard, that's honestly not that bad. I think that's a pretty solid deal for him. And then Ted Karras coming in on a 1-year deal. And thing is, the losses for this team, there really haven't been many notable losses from the Dolphins. They lose tight end Clive at Walford. Jamarcus Webb is out. Evan Boehm is out. Now, Aqib Talib and Rashad Jones, those are two very good defensive players that are no longer on the team. But if you look at this kind of reconstruction of the Dolphins defense, that really isn't a bad set of losses. Now, here's the thing. Who do the Dolphins play at quarterback? Now, of course, a lot of people expect and think for the Dolphins to go out and select with one of their, come on, the Dolphins have like half the draft this year. They have a high first-round draft. Actually, they have 3 first-round draft picks, I should say. And with one of them, many people expect Miami to go out and select former Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Now, his health is the big question, especially with that hip injury that he sustained late in the season last year. Now, I do think the quarterback position is the big position of concern for this Dolphins team. They have a new head coach, Brian Flores, or he was a new head coach last season. I think he did as well as he could have. But if the Dolphins decide to bring in another quarterback, is that too many cooks in the kitchen in a way? They'll still have Fitzpatrick as far as I know. Fitz is still there. Rosen is still there. And if they bring in another young guy who they essentially will, if they draft Tagovailoa as high as, a lot of people are expecting them to at 13, isn't that kind of isn't that telling the other quarterbacks in the room that Tagovailoa has the keys to the castle in just a year or two? Once he's healthy enough, once he's ready to step onto the field, because that's how it feels to me. If they were to go out and select, a quarterback who has the pedigree that Tagovailoa does, that would come with the high draft capital that Tagovailoa does. And thing is, for the Dolphins, they don't have that same amount of capital invested in Rosen. And although Rosen was a high first-round draft pick by the Arizona Cardinals, the Dolphins just gave up a second rounder for him. To them, if they don't have to start Rosen and if they don't think he's the guy, really a second round pick was just a flyer. That doesn't really matter to them. So this team, like I said, because of the lack of direction at the quarterback position, at some of the other skill positions on the offensive side of the ball, it really feels like they don't have an identity yet. Are they going to be a strong defensive team? Well, they weren't last year. Are they going to be a strong offensive team? They were at some points last year. The thing is, without a set identity and without an idea of where this team is going, I'm not sure that this team is really set up to succeed. For that reason, that's why I'm still putting them at the bottom of the AFC East next season. They haven't done anything this offseason to really pique my interest for me to say, look, this team is going to be so much better at something else next season. They're going to be so much better at stopping the run. Or, for instance, just because they brought in so many edge rushers, they're going to be so much better at getting to the quarterback and so much better at playing defense that they're going to contend in the AFC East. I just don't see it, just based on what they did last season. And what it appears that they're doing this season, it looks like they're kind of just throwing money at the problem until they can find a quarterback. And if they think they can find that quarterback in the draft, well, good for them. But if they decide that it's Tagovailoa, I'm not sure that they're going to have their quarterback as quickly as they would like. Now, just based on that, little spiel about the Dolphins, I think it's time to kind of re-rank how I think the AFC East is going to end up next season, and we'll close it out there. I think the Dolphins will remain at the bottom of the division. I think that they'll be better than they were last season, but again, just still harping on it, they don't seem to have an identity yet, and I don't think they have a quarterback who's ready yet to step into the role of an NFL starting quarterback. Now here's the tough part. Deciding between these three other teams, because the Patriots are losing a ton of talent. Massive amounts of talent is leaving New England, including their starting quarterback. The Jets appear to be getting better. The Bills appear to be getting better. As much as I'm reluctant to do this just because of how much I believe in Bill Belichick's coaching ability, this is tough for me. I do think the Patriots kind of slide down into that third position. Now, if they somehow get Jared Stidham or Brian Hoyer to become the starting quarterback for that team and have them performing as well as, if not better than Tom Brady last season, then we might be seeing a similar kind of outlook to the season as this past season. But I'm not sure that they can do that, because as much as I think Tom Brady has been a system quarterback for his career, it's Bill Belichick who I think has been pulling the strings. And as much as I think that those two feed off of, or have fed off of each other their entire careers, they need one another. Those two have needed one another, and Belichick's needed a quarterback that can play like Brady, and he's got it in times that he's needed it. And Brady's needed a coach like Belichick, and he's always had it. I'm going to set it down. I'm going to put the Patriots in the third spot of the AFC East. I'm going to slide the Bills up one. I'm going to slide the Jets up one. And I'm going to slide them up for this reason. Like I said, I think the Patriots have lost too much talent, and I don't think they'll be able to recover it in this draft and I don't think they've done enough so far in free agency to recoup a lot of this talent. I think the Jets have just gotten better, just enough to pick up an extra win or two. I'm not sure they'll be making the playoffs with a really strong AFC, but I think they've done enough to make it up at least one. Go up the totem pole once in the AFC East. And that leaves the Bills. And I think the Bills already have been progressing upward. They've been trending up. Their offense has gotten better. Their defense looks to get better, if not stay exactly the same. I mean, last season they were 10-6. They had a good year. They made the playoffs. It took a piece of Deshaun Watson magic in Houston to take down the Bills and put them out of the playoffs. And now that they have weapons or another weapon in Stephon Diggs, I think that just makes them that much better. So kind of just to recap the new rank or my predictions and rankings for next season, just after free agency. That's saying nothing about the draft. That isn't making any predictions on the draft. Just after this free agent period so far, we're putting the new AFC at Bills at 1, Jets at 2, Patriots coming in at 3rd, and the Dolphins still kind of trailing in behind. Now, I see now that we have another another viewer. Thank you for tuning in, even if it is just for a little bit of this live stream. The stream will be going up on YouTube just as a regular video right after this. If you guys have any other questions for me or have any commentary, throw it up in the chat right now. I'll be more than happy to hang out for just a little bit longer and take some general questions. Well, if you guys don't have anything else for me, that's all I have for this evening. I'm hoping to make some of the later ones a little bit longer. This really was, in a way, a trial run for me. This is the first time I'm doing this for anybody. Um, I appreciate everybody tuning in. I'll be sure to let everybody know when the next one's coming out. The next one is going to be on Friday evening at 5 o'clock. Hoping to go at least this long, if not a little bit longer. And we're going to go through the rest of the AFC before we move on to the NFC. So I think we're going to be moving on to the AFC South. That's kind of where I'd like to go with this. Thank you everybody for tuning in. This has been Just G on the YouTube channel of the G and Finn Show. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.